Jared here with CarBuzz.com, and today I am a very, very happy camper because I am driving the 2019 McLaren 720S Spider for a few days. Now, I've had an enormous amount of respect for the McLaren 720S since I drove it. I think this could be the ultimate supercar on sale today. It is dethroning the likes of Ferrari and Lamborghini, and nobody seems to have an answer for this. And if you want to see the best deals on the McLaren 720S, be sure to click the link in the description below. Let's not waste any time. Let's get behind the wheel of this $315,000 mega supercar. So let's do a launch control to start. I think that'll be a fun way to begin the driving portion. Just push the launch button. I've got everything in active, awaiting full throttle, boost building, boost ready, and go. There we go. We got some slip, and there it goes, hooks up. Woo! That was 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. This car, for a rear-wheel drive car, accelerates unlike anything else I've ever driven. My arms are tingling. That's how fast this car is. It needs new words to describe how fast the launch is once this thing hooks up. I could only imagine how quick it would be with all-wheel drive. So all of that brunt is coming from McLaren's 4-liter twin turbocharged V8. Produces 710 metric horsepower. It's like a little bit lower on the American horsepower rating. 568 foot-pounds of torque. That's going out through this 7-speed dual clutch transmission. If there's a better 7-speed on the market, any dual clutch, I've not driven it. I've driven Porsche's PDK. That might be close to this, but the thing that this does is you hold the paddle and it'll just downshift. There's second, there's third. Whoa. It's unbelievable. Even when you're just driving along in automatic mode, if you're just cruising along in 5th and you go ahead and floor it, it'll just go 5th, 2nd, just like that. It's faster than any transmission I've ever driven. Like, I don't know how it knows I want 2nd, like that quickly. It's unbelievable. So the one thing that I want to iterate to you that's really interesting on this car is the brake pedal. And the first time I ever drove a 720S, it was with a dealer, it was a coupe. And the salesman just told me, he said, listen, the one thing you're gonna notice, you're gonna have to brake much harder than you do in any other car. The brake pedal is ridiculously heavy. Like, you have to put so much pressure on it to get it to stop, but when you do, the brakes are just unbelievable. It stops this car in a ridiculous time. So the one we're driving happens to be the Roadster. You can tell we have the glass roof above me. It's only 108 pounds heavier than the coupe. The coupe weighs about 2,800 pounds. You're gonna be about 2,900 pounds with the convertible. Might as well go for the convertible. It barely hinders performance at all. You're still gonna go 212 miles per hour on your top speed. Your top speed with the roof down is still 202. Oh, well, you're only limited to 202. That's still wickedly fast on this car. And there's different drive modes you can fiddle with. I have it now in the sport settings. So you have different controls for your handling settings, and then you have different controls for your transmission. Each one of those has a comfort, sport, and track mode that can be adjusted independent of each other. So if you want to have comfort handling, but you want the transmission to be in its track mode, you can do that. Now, I just put it into its track settings, and the little screen here, the virtual digital display, folds down. So now all I have is my gear position, speed, and RPM, because that's all I need to be focused on in a car like this. There's no buttons on the steering wheel to adjust volume or radio or anything like that. You just have 2 paddle shifters that are like the triggers on a rifle. It's just pulling them is one of the most satisfying things I've ever had in a car. They're just trigger so fast. The one thing is, I wish they were a little bigger, and I feel like they were bigger on the coupe that I drove a little while ago, but maybe I'm just imagining that it had different paddles. But the steering wheel itself, as we pass by a little turtle on the road, who we will try not to hit on the way back, is just this amazingly nice, it feels like a race car steering wheel for sure, except, you know, a race car steering wheel has far more buttons than this one. And it's wrapped in like an Alcantara. You kind of need that because this car, the steering is so twitchy and so telepathic. You want to make sure that you have a really good grip on it. And if you've driven a sports car recently, all the sports car makers need to learn from McLaren here, because this car is a masterclass on how to do steering feel. This is a electro-hydraulic steering rack, and it's so twitchy and so nimble and so agile that if I ran over a penny that was lying on the road, I could tell you whether it was a dirty penny or a brand new one. That's how telepathic this steering is. And oh my God, the acceleration in almost any gear. McLaren says this car will hit 124 miles an hour from a standstill in 4.6 seconds. So that means in under 5 seconds, faster than you can count to 5, you're going to jail. So I have it in its track settings where it's, you know, it's gonna let you slip the traction and spin the wheels. And I drove this car in the wet yesterday when it was raining. It rains all the time here in Florida. This car will spin its rear tires through 5th gear. It's a bit terrifying. It's actually a bit much for me. I would be very happy if McLaren sold this car with like a little bit less horsepower. And I don't usually say that about a lot of cars, but this could use a little bit less horsepower. I'd be fine stepping down into like a 570S or maybe a 600 LT. But the thing that's so nice about this car and why it might be the best supercar on the planet right now is because it's comfortable. I have so much space in this cabin. I'm not bumping elbows with my camera guy right now. I have tons of room on the other side. There's storage nooks everywhere in it. There's glass all over the place. McLaren has these glass buttresses for the convertible model that just make visibility a breeze. You can see out of it. So this is a car that you could actually daily drive. It's a bit low in the front, but you just push this and it'll lift the nose up and makes it easy to drive this thing every day. And then you've got the adaptive dampers, which have the car has a brain that controls each wheel independently. So if one wheel goes over a huge bump, it doesn't break your back. Now, this is still a stiff car. It's still a supercar. It's still bumpy, and you hear a lot of the road and engines and cooling and stuff like that. But for a supercar, I'm just incredibly impressed by how well this car rides on a day-to-day basis. And you don't lose much with the convertible, maybe a little bit of storage behind the driver's seat that you probably weren't going to use anyway. But here's what's so awesome about it. I'm going to go ahead and do the roof. The roof goes up in just 11 seconds, up or down. You can do it from 31 miles an hour, so if you get stuck in the rain, you can do this while you're like crawling along in traffic. And there we go. Now we can hear that amazing engine. Yes! That is, woo! And then when I get hard on the carbon ceramics, I have the aero button engaged. So that's gonna do an air brake with that rear spoiler. The rear spoiler comes up. We're gonna go ahead and pass here. Oh, it sounds so good with the roof down. I don't know why you wouldn't get the convertible. It's barely heavier than the coupe. You don't feel it from behind the wheel. The visibility is still great. And now you get to hear that incredible 4-liter V8 with nothing blocking you. This is probably the best car I've ever driven. When you watch a review of a supercar like this, you often hear about how well it handles and all of those good things. But since I don't have access to a racetrack and I am not a race car driver, I thought I'd spend a little bit of time showing you how good the McLaren 720S is on the interior. So we'll start off with the steering wheel. I told you it's wrapped in this lovely Alcantara here. also carbon fiber material here. I believe that's an optional extra, but it looks fantastic. I love the Alcantara here because you really need to grip on and hang on to this car for dear life. You have this big central screen here that's going to display all of the car's information, and you can cycle through information here on the left, so you can have it show navigation, your radio station, phone, messages, trip information, things like that. Very easy to control, or at the press of a button, the whole thing folds away. Now you're in the more track-oriented setting where all you're going to see is your gear positioning, your RPMs, and your speed, because that's really all you need when you're driving a car like this. You don't need to be distracted with other information. So now let's move on over here. We've got this big touchscreen. You can do a lot of stuff on it. You can see here variable drift control. So that's something that I did not show you while I was driving, because that is something that I am not skilled enough to use on the public road. Basically, when you turn off the traction control settings, you can control how much the car will slide, so you can like basically set your drift angle from the car's computer. That is really cool. This is your home menu, so you have your Bluetooth settings, your audio settings, and things like that. You also have physical buttons to get to it. So if I push this little fan, that's going to take me to climate control. Look, we've got a little guy with a little race car helmet, and you can control the fan speed on here. It works pretty well, and you can touch the temperature, and I can go up or down, or I can slide it up or down. Very easy to control. I wish there was, just buttons to use, because when you're driving a car like this and you're having to fiddle with the air conditioning controls, it can be a little bit hectic, because this car can just dart. Like, you can just leave your lane very easily without warning. So when you're trying to fiddle with the touchscreen, not great, but McLaren has figured out a way to make it at least pretty easy and simple to use all of that stuff on here. So to control the transmission is pretty easy. You just put your foot on the brake, this real heavy brake pedal. You really have to floor it. Like, when I first got into this car, to shift it into reverse and to park, like, you think you have enough brake pressure, and then you feel the car creep, and you're like, oh, you have to really slam down on that brake pedal. But when you have that pressed, you can just push that to go into reverse. That one takes you into drive. Neutral, no park. You basically just drop it into neutral, and here's your start stop. This red button here will show you a startup clip and a little exhaust revving a little later, although it doesn't let you rev all the way when you're sitting still. And then the parking brake is over here on my left. It will engage automatically when you shut the car off in neutral, which is pretty good. Now I've got to talk about these controls. So that's what I was fiddling with while I was driving. So basically, here's your stop, start, defeat. Yes, this car has stop, start. When it comes to a stop, it is very noticeable. You have whirring and engine and V8 noise, and then nothing. It's very abrupt. It's pretty crazy. The NSX had a better one because it's hybrid, but it's actually not too bad. It's pretty smooth, like smoother than a lot of mainstream cars, but I would go ahead and turn that off. This is a supercar. Who cares about saving fuel? Although this car gets decent gas mileage for the segment. I believe it's about 22 on the highway. It's rated at like 15 combined, but if you see here, I've been averaging like 17.2. Not terrible for a 710 horsepower car. So now up here, if you push this little active button, it'll light up. Now I can use these controls here. So we've got one for the powertrain, the gear shift, and then we have one for the handling. So they can control different elements of the car. So we've got them in C right now. S stands for sport, and then T is for track. And you see when I turn it to track, the screen is going to automatically fold away. And then we've got this button here. That's for all of the active aerodynamics. So you've got that spoiler that's going to come up at high speeds, and then it's going to become an air brake when you slam down on those brakes. And the other thing that I want to stress about this car is it's pretty loud in here. Like, you do hear a lot of road noise, you hear rocks getting kicked up and stuff like that, but it is so comfortable in here. I kind of wish the seat was a little bit more bolstered. Other than being a hard seat back, it's very comfortable. The power seat adjustment works pretty well, but it's the most annoying adjustment ever. The controls are like all the way down here. I have to reach my hand in here. I have no idea what any of the buttons do. Every passenger that I've had get in here tells me, how do I adjust this? How do I adjust? They have no idea how to do it. I wish I just had like a normal seat control. McLaren actually does offer manual seats on this car. I might think about doing that, to be honest. You've got your launch control button here. You've got the control for the back window. Since we have the Spider, you can just roll down that back window, even with the roof up, to get just a lot more of that exhaust. And then we've got our roof control here. It goes up or down in just 11 seconds. You've also got a ton of storage down here. You've got like a big storage nook here with a small bottle holder. You've got another cup holder right here, and then you've got storage here. You can stick stuff here. You've got like a nice lid. We've got a nice pouch there, and I've even got a nice Alcantara wrapped pouch right here in front of the driver's seat. So tons of places to put stuff, lots of elbow room. The doors are real wide. I have tons of room to rest my arm here over on the door. And we've got this amazing 12 speaker Bowers & Wilkins audio that is so overpowering that even with the roof down and the V8 engine at 7,000 RPM, you can just hear your music beautifully. It's fantastic. And the other thing that I love about this convertible model is that you get an all glass roof, and at the press of a button, the roof can become opaque. It sends an electric charge through it, and it sort of makes it tinted so that you get less sun. So if you're the type of person like me who burns easily, at a press of a button, you can have it be a little bit darker. Very clever solution. Now, let's check out the storage on the McLaren 720S, which is obviously not this car's strong suit. The reason why I'm standing up front is because that's where the trunk, or frunk in this case, is on the McLaren. If you look back there, there's an engine where the trunk should be. So if I hit this on the key fob, it'll open up. Now we've got about 7 cubic feet of storage, you can see. I have a hard suitcase with all of my camera gear. I've got a backpack here, and there's still a lot of room off to the side where I could stick a few more items. So if you're gonna do a grocery run in this car, I think you'll be able to do it quite well. If you're a single bachelor who's driving this car, you should be just fine with all of your groceries. If not, there's a little bit of storage back behind the tonneau cover where the roof goes. We'll go ahead and check that out a little bit later. But before we do, let's just focus a little bit on the front end styling of the 720S, which I will be honest, when I first saw this car, I did not think it looked prettier than the 675 LT that it replaced. Then I saw it in person. All it took was the right color for me to realize how stunningly beautiful this car is, because everything on it is curved and designed and engineered in such a way that it all feeds into the car. You can see all of the air gets channeled in through here into the radiators, and then it goes through the doors. It's unbelievable how this car channels air. And this shade of Helios orange on this car is unbelievable. I was sent a coupe in Memphis red, which looked pretty good, but I think this orange just really makes this car pop like crazy. They're now doing this teal blue. It's very 80s and retro. That's probably the color I'd option, but you really can't go wrong with this amazing orange. Now let's go see how the storage and styling is from the back. One of the differences between the coupe and the Spider is that you get like a glass area where you can put stuff on the coupe. The Spider is a bit different. When you do the latch for the convertible top, you can put it in its up position, and you actually have like a little bit of storage here. You're not gonna get huge items here. It's very shallow, so you don't have a ton of room here, but it is a little bit of extra storage should you need it. Coming around back, this car remains just as pretty, if not prettier. Back here, you've got these real thin taillights, very integrated with the spoiler. There's so much curvature to this wing. I have it right now in its up position. I think it just looks crazy. It's insane that this car doesn't have a fixed spoiler, but then when it comes up, it just adds a little bit of lunacy to this car. Look at the exhausts. They're up here, so when you need to like come around back here for something, these blow really hot right into your face, but they sound incredible being mounted all the way up here. The engine lives under this little cover here. You can get just a little peeky-boo at it, but there's no way to open it unless you go to the dealer. I don't know what you would really do on the engine yourself. I don't think you're good enough of a mechanic to work on this car. The other thing that's really cool is that at night, this engine bay does glow red, which is pretty awesome. It clashes with the orange a bit, so it would be better if you got like a red car or a white or something neutral like that, but the red light is incredibly cool when it lights up at night. So although you can't open it like a Ferrari to like view the masterpiece of the engine, the light is a nice little touch. Now let's go ahead and price out our McLaren 720S Spider. You better get your checkbook out and then get your wife's checkbook out because this is a really expensive car. So we don't actually have a window sticker for this car, but I did get a window sticker for a coupe that I was supposed to test a couple of weeks ago. The 720S coupe starts at $284,745, but the one that I tested had a ton of options, so it was as tested price of $353,140. It had MSO paddles, brake calipers, a different wheel finish, 10-spoke wheels. The vehicle lift system is a must-have for $2,500. Carbon fiber exterior package was like $10,700. Like, no, that's a little too rich for my blood. Carbon fiber interior, $2,700. That's a little more reasonable. Electric steering column is pretty smart. Sports exhaust for $5,700. I don't know what the base exhaust sounds like, but the sports exhaust is certainly glorious. The one I had, the coupe, had Gorilla Glass doors, but obviously you don't get those with the convertible, and then the paint is going to be a little bit extra. And the audio, the 12-speaker Bowers & Wilkins system is about $4,200. 12 speakers, it sounds phenomenal. For all those times you don't want to be a lunatic, you're going to want that system. It's one of the best stereos I've heard. So the coupe is $285,000 about. The Spider is going to start at $315,000. Significant amount more, but I think it is worth every penny. You get to enjoy the car even more, and when the roof is up and in place, it almost feels like you're driving the coupe and there's almost no performance sacrifice. So I would go for the Spider. So let's sum up our time with the 2019 McLaren 720S as I let the soft closed doors do its thing. Shut the door there. So I think this could be the best supercar on the planet. The only things that I seem to find fault with is that it's just too fast. It's just too much to use on the road. I would almost be willing to step down into the 570S or the 600 LT, or maybe that new McLaren GT that's coming out. That's gonna have this same 4-liter engine tuned down to about 600 horsepower, a lot more storage space. That might be the one to get. It's also gonna be bigger and more luxurious. It's gonna offer a cashmere interior. That might be the one that I would wait for. But if you're an adrenaline junkie, I don't think there is a better, more pure driver's car out there in the supercar segment than this. Let's talk about the faults, because there are some. It's a little bit loud, so if you're gonna drive it every day, but it is a supercar. If you want to drive it every day, I think the NSX might be a little bit of a better option, but this has a lot of comfort in its own right. It has a really nice interior. The McLaren 720S is going to earn a score of must buy because this is a dream car in the purest sense of the word. I can't think of any cars if I had an unlimited budget. There are cars that cost $1 million, $2 million, and this car matches all of them on performance. This came out only a couple years after the McLaren P1, which had over 900 horsepower and a hybrid system, and this, with the same tires, is just as fast. How unbelievable is that? It's incredible. There's no way I could give it anything lower than must buy. And if you've liked this review and you'd like to see more, be sure to subscribe to the CarBuzz YouTube channel and download our apps on iOS and Android to keep up with the latest and greatest in automotive news and to see more reviews just like this one. Hope you've enjoyed the video. See you next time.